Alright, now how do we protect against directory traversals? In the previous video, we've seen the very most basic types of attacks of directory traversal attacks. Now, today in this video, we're actually going to look into the directory traversal prevention. So, as we've seen, these types of vulnerabilities allow attackers to access arbitrary files on the system. Now, these tend to occur in older technology stacks, but you might be surprised because in quite a few recent penetration testing assessments or application security assessments, I've seen directory traversal attacks because developers would actually build something custom instead of just using a CMS. Well, not in all circumstances one can actually get an out-of-the-box solution to whatever problem they may have. So developers have to come up with custom solutions. And when you come up with custom solutions that you write yourself, you're actually opening the Pandora box, because if you're not very security aware, and a lot of developers are not actually security aware, chances are that you might actually blow it out. So map URLs to literally to directories on the disk. Now, prevalence is still very common. Exploitability is moderate depending on the situation, so you cannot just take a LFI or directory traversal payloads list and just shoot it at your target, because in most circumstances it won't work unless you're dealing with a CMS that has a CVE that has already been publicly known to actually be vulnerable to LFI, and some people have actually crafted payloads or exploits in different lists. Now, the impact of this vulnerability is quite devastating. So if an attacker discovers a directory traversal vulnerability, it is only a matter of time before they compromise your system. So one way to compromise your system would actually be to actually get access to, for example, if you're in Linux, get access to the home directory, so they could just try to read // let's say home, then SSH ID RSA or whatever SSH key or ID authorize or whatever the SSH key is. And with that SSH key, if you have SSH access enabled and SSH key access enabled, they could actually log in and log into your session and impersonate you. So open up a new SSH session as you log in with the access key, and from there, depending on the level of permissions they have, they could escalate their privileges. So if your site is indexed on Google and you have URLs that pass file names in the query string, you're likely advertising a potential vulnerability to attackers. But come on, everybody does that, so it's not like you can prevent that. In certain circumstances you cannot, and you shouldn't even be able to prevent that, because you're actually sort of like trying to find the right word. You're actually making it less likely for your business to thrive if certain assets aren't discoverable via Google. Now, hackers often use search engines to locate likely targets and will search for telltale URLs. Try searching Google for site yourdomain.com inurl.file. Now, inurl.file, if you have this sort of parameter, that can actually open the room to LFI vulnerabilities, unless you're doing very good work at sanitizing it. And let's actually see how you protect against Director Traversal. So you can use a content management system CMS. Chances are, so if your site handles a lot of documents, chances are the workflows around uploading, indexing, publishing, and replacing documents will be quite involved. So if you have non-technical users, you may have non-technical users acting as administrators. So if this is the case, you would want to use a CMS which are designed for these exact cases and which have historically been probably proven to be secure or not, or have been strengthened or secured over time. A modern CMS will protect against directory traversal. You can use indirection, so if a CMS proves too heavyweight as a solution, consider using indirection to label your files. What does that actually mean? So each time a file is uploaded, construct a friendly name for this on your site, and when the file is accessed, perform a lookup in your data store to discover the actual file path. So this approach would be this approach effectively whitelists valid names and avoids the fragility of passing around raw files. So using an indirection is a way to mitigate it. You can also segregate your documents. So if you host them on a separate file server or file partition or in a cloud storage, it's a good idea because this will allow you to prevent mixing public documents and more sensitive materials. Or if you're using actually a cloud storage, that cloud storage might come in handy with a lot of security measures out of the box. Sanitize file name parameters. If you insist on using raw file names, you need to sanitize the file names coming in from HTTP requests. So this would seem to be simply a matter of checking for backtracking with .. So in fact, in this situation, we don't have any code samples like we had for the other vulnerabilities. In actual fact, it is a lot more complex than that. So Unix file system interprets paths starting with tilde, is this tilde, / as a relative to the home directory. It is even easier to construct a lot of ambiguous paths in Windows. Moreover, depending on how URLs are encoded, it is possible to obscure malicious paths. So see here for a list of exploits people have found. What is here? This is the OWASP not found page. Testing for path traversal. Maybe you can just go to path traversal here at OWASP and testing director traversal file include. This is probably for PHP. Path traversal. There are a lot of examples here, and I highly recommend everyone who's in security or who's developing to actually get familiarized with OWASP, because this is such a wonderful resource to actually learn. So many security people, security professionals aren't very intimate with OWASP, but if you are, I can say with the hand on my heart, sincerely say that you have an edge over other people. And what's even more interesting is that this so OWASP has a lot of wonderful resources. So if you actually look into the cheat sheets, OWASP cheat sheets here, you have dozens of cheat sheets available for any kind of technology, any kind of vulnerability, any kind of anything that you can think of. Studying these is actually going to give you a lot of edge as a security professional, even if you're either side you might be in, if you're in the red or in the blue or in whatever color of the security spectrum you might be in. Now, the safest approach is to restrict file names to a list of known good characters and ensure that any reference to files use only those characters. You can also protect against directory traversal using or running with restricted permissions. So you can run your server processes with only the permissions that they require to function, which is by the principle of least privilege, which is well defined here under Hacksplaining. Least privilege, principle of least privilege. And I said that I'm actually going to do a separate video on this one. So let's actually go back. This can help limit the impact of vulnerabilities as a second line of defense. Make sure the server process can only access the directories it needs. Consider running the process in a chroot jail if you're running on Unix. And we've discussed about chroot jail in other vulnerabilities here on Hacksplaining. This will mitigate the risk of directory traversal if a directory traversal is discovered. So you can go to actually read further at Acunetics, but I would highly suggest to look into, let's see, local file inclusion probably, or RFI. Let's see, LFI, RFI, directory traversal, path traversal. Path traversal cheat sheet. Nope. Path traversal. So you can actually go at path traversal and learn more about it. This is the place to start. So at OWASP.org, and they have a lot of great content on their YouTube channel, because they have multiple YouTube channels. They have a lot of great content on Twitter, and so on and so forth. So this was directory traversal. Next we have the quiz here. Which of the following methods can circumvent directory traversal vulnerabilities? Making users change, storing documents, keep static documents on a separate file system from your executable code, storing documents in a CMS, or the keep static. I'll go with the store documents first. Why is it a good idea to restrict what directories on disk your web server can access? It forces your users to choose complex. It restricts less harm an attacker could do. Yeah, so this was directory traversal in a nutshell. Next, we're actually going to look into reflected XSS, then DOM-based XSS, and then I'm not extremely excited about these two, but I'm really excited about file upload vulnerabilities and about access controls. So let's go into those in the next few videos.